Welcome to Coffee with Kupke, a production of St. Paul Inside the Walls. Here on Coffee with Kupke, we grab a cup of coffee, at least we're claiming this is coffee. We sit with Monsignor Raymond Kupke, the pastor of St. Anthony's in Hawthorne, professor at Immaculate Conception Seminary, diocesan archivist. We sit with Monsignor Kupke to delve into the history of Catholicism in the Diocese of Paterson. My name is Father Paul Manning. I am the vicar for Evangelization for the Diocese of Paterson. And here I am with Monsignor Kupke. So grab your cup of coffee and let's jump right in. I'm going to take a sip. Welcome back to Chapter 8. The period 1947 to 1963, right after World War II, to the beginning year of Second Vatican Council. And I was going to call it the Mcnalty era predominantly, but Bishop Boland is there for the first 5 years of this period.
He is, yes.
Yeah. And I think the last time we spoke about Chapter 8, or maybe the first time, was I'm kind of seeing this as the last era of Christendom, like 1963 and on. The world and the church will begin to change in a big way.
Yeah. There are many, if you talk to the older priests, actually they're fading away, but the generation of Kevin Flanagan and older, they look on the Mcnalty years as the golden era of the diocese because it was all growth.
Well, and
all buildings and opening new
parishes
things.
So in our last
and McNulty left just as it was all about to hit the fan.
1963.
Right. He got transferred to Buffalo. His time in Buffalo was nowhere near as happy.
You mentioned that. Well, is he the one who called Paterson Paradise, right?
Yeah. Right.
So we talked about a number of specific churches, parishes that were founded, and I wanted to do one more thing because I think it's somewhat unique, and that is the parish of Christ the King in New Vernon, which in your book says is located in the heart of estate country, Morris County estate country.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about the location and why.
Well, Harding Township is probably one of the wealthiest municipalities in the state, maybe in the country.
Yeah, still. Was it back then?
It was back then as well. This is, the area between Mendham and Morristown. So you're dealing with large pieces of property, basically estates. And it had not been a particularly Catholic area. It was not particularly developed. I mean, Harding Township really is not founded until the 1920s.
For Warren G. Harding.
For Warren Harding, the president. But, it just had not been developed. It was not that populated, A very wealthy person here and a very wealthy person there.
And they were buying these big estates for what, horse farms or
horse farms, yeah.
I mean, when I need to drive to Mendham or Chester, I love to take the back way past Christ the King through Jockey Hollow.
Yes,
It's just gorgeous still.
Yeah, it's a very pretty area. People who think that New Jersey is the turnpike.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You have only to take them out to that area and say, well, this is the other part of New Jersey we don't show you.
There's one, as you're going toward Mendham, there's one vast field on the left, just a huge expanse that reminds me of a field on my grandparents' farm.
Yeah. It's a pretty area.
So the desire for a parish arises, you said, with some Catholic women.
Yes, the area is beginning to develop a little bit, and also there's a growing number of Catholic employees on these estates.
Yeah, probably a lot of them Irish.
Yes, right. So there's a desire to have a church in New Vernon. And these are people who have the money to make happen what they want. To diverge a little bit, this is the same community that managed to upend the plans for a jet port in Morristown because they bought up the property and donated it to the federal government as a wildlife preserve.
Yeah, so the Great Swamp is now where there would have been a jet port. They moved it further east.
These are people who know how to work the system.
Yeah, right. So would that have been Newark Airport?
No, it would have been a third jet port.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Bishop Mcnalty names James Fallon, the first pastor. Now, we knew Father Fallon, Monsignor Fallon, who was, I don't know if he always was, but in later life he was somewhat curmudgeonly.
Right, but he had a touch of class and a little bit of education.
Well educated.
It was a good match, really.
Yeah, he was kind of an erudite guy, right?
Yes, an erudite man, right. But initially, there had only ever been one church in Harding Township.
And it was Presbyterian?
And it was Presbyterian.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thought of Catholics coming in and building an ugly church in our beautiful colonial township did not sit very well with,
Why did they presume it was going to be ugly?
I think they thought that was the only church we knew how to build. Given what we were building in that period,
this would have been
the beginning of the church school.
Oh, I see. Yeah, where you're building the school first, and then got it.
So they, we were kind of about as welcome as a A&P supermarket in the middle of town. This is not what they do out there. So
to this day, there's no quick check in Harding.
Right, exactly. So there was an undercurrent of resistance, but there were two people who were embarrassed by the undercurrent. One was the pastor of the Presbyterian Church.
Wow. Early ecumenism.
We're talking about early 50s.
Yeah, so amazing.
This was, he was very ahead of his time in many ways.
Yeah.
And the other one was a gentleman, Kirby. His estate is right, if you were to drive from here to Christ the King today, you go right by his property.
On the left or right?
On the left.
Okay.
But he was embarrassed by his neighbors and fellow religionists. Neither of these people were Catholic, so he ultimately sold a piece of property that he had in the middle of the township for $1 to the Catholics, with the proviso, and we have the letter in the archives, that they build a church that was in keeping with the architectural flavor of the township.
And so we have Christ the King,
right?
In what is it? Early American? What would you call?
It's sometimes referred to as Neo-Georgian, but colonial American.
Okay,
style. Yes, and in many ways this fit perfectly with the founding pastor Jim Fallon, who had something of a sense of.
History, art, architecture.
He was the perfect one for this task, So
is he the one who went out and secured the architect and made sure that it was built in that style?
Exactly.
Wow. He was always proud of having founded Christ the King. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know how they ever got him out of there, but
and interestingly, he ended up at St. Virgil's in Morris Plains.
Yes.
So I read that the first Mass was celebrated in the firehouse.
Yes, the Harding Township Firehouse. Or I guess it's actually the Green Village Firehouse.
And there were 200 people in attendance. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, for that era, to suddenly have 200 Catholics probably was something of a shock.
And $170 in the first collection.
Yeah, that was not good.
Okay. That's like $1 a person.
A lot of these places when they started out, this was the same thing that happened in Montville. The locals felt there weren't enough Catholics in town to make something fly, but then when they would have the first Mass and 200 people would show up, they would say, oh, there's more of you than we thought there were.
Oh, my gosh.
All of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and, you're off and running.
So we have this great growth in parishes, but at the same time in this era, we have an era of united desire for Catholic education.
Yeah.
And you talk about the 36 new elementary schools in 15 years.
Yeah, we couldn't build them fast enough.
That's just amazing.
Well, it was the period right after the Second World War, so the baby boom.
Okay.
So all of these GIs are returning to the United States. There's a reason historically why we refer to this as the greatest generation.
It was not just in heroism, but in size.
Yeah, well, they came back. These were unbelievably young men coming back. Some of them were only 20 years old, and they'd already
seen
war
the
and devastation and everything. So, they had a zeal. They had a
dream. They wanted to build,
right?
Yeah.
And they started getting married. Again, the generation is gone, but when you talk to the priests who were alive at that point, they said that this was a period when all the marriage regulations went out the window because they were doing weddings so quickly, between right up to the war, a cheerful young woman would come to the rectory with this guy and say,
he's going
he's leaving on Thursday. Can you marry us before then?
Yeah.
And the pastors looked at this as, well, for God and country, and come in on Wednesday morning and we'll marry.
Yeah.
So a lot of strictures about weddings. For example, Protestant Catholic weddings, prior to that point, they were not even taking place in church. They were taking place in the sacristies. Suddenly that all went out the window. But when they came back, they changed the world overnight, and in many, many different ways. Like across the street from here, you have Drew University, which did not have any Catholic students before World War II. But when they all came back on the GI Bill,
they could go to school. And wow.
It changed everything overnight. But it also created the Catholic suburbs. You can look at a map of the diocese and see the new parishes creeping up the highways, as they head west.
Yeah.
And also emptied the traditional Catholic urban ghettos that had.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that in an episode. So I was looking at during the Boland and Mcnalty years, religious communities present expanded to staff new schools, and you have the Ringwood Franciscans, the Filippini Sisters, the Caldwell Dominicans, Christian Charities, Felicians, Sisters of Charity, Newburgh Dominicans, with 2 or 3 schools each.
Right.
And then
some of them coming into the diocese for the first time.
Yeah. Then you have the Baptistines, Sisters of the Holy Family, Benedictine Sisters, Franciscan Sisters, and Peekskill Franciscans.
Yeah. Some of them were not even traditionally involved in grammar school education, but in order to get a foothold in the diocese,
they said, we'll do it.
They did it, like St. Pius X in Montville was the only parish elementary school that community staffed in the whole country.
And who was it?
This is the Franciscan Sisters of St. Elizabeth. They do mostly Montessori.
Yeah, still do.
But the crazy thing also is, well, there are several crazy aspects of this story, but it was up to the pastors
to get the community.
Yeah. So, a pastor may have been in Passaic with the Newburgh Dominicans, and then so, whoever he was aware of when he was a young curate is now, vicar general of the community, and now, so they go and they get them this way, one way or another.
Yeah, there was one community that seemed a little obscure to me. Was it Sisters of the Holy Family, maybe? Or
Yes, this is a Polish community that was brought in to teach at St. Joseph's in Lincoln Park
but were they
by Stanley
Franciscans?
Wolikowski.
Oh, yeah, okay. The Franciscans were gone by that point.
Right.
Yeah, because that was the
Yes,
illegal parish.
right,
Yeah,
that was
okay.
the illegal parish.
So
But the other thing is that the religious communities were bending over backwards to accommodate this. They were sending women out who hadn't finished college yet. You know,
because they needed
couldn't
them so
staff these
badly.
schools fast enough. You know, and we're
I have a note here. Was this also the beginning of lay teachers?
yes, not exactly the beginning, but there might have been a lay teacher, you know, one
Here
or
or there,
two.
yeah.
But now
Because we needed them.
you needed them, so there were many, many more than.
I have a note that parish high schools became diocesan high schools.
Yes, there were a number of parish high schools that make the transformation in this period. Certainly, the Bailey School at Assumption in Morristown becomes a diocesan high school. It had outgrown its facility.
Yes.
And, you know, again, this boom is now reaching high school.
Right.
You know, those little babies of the baby boom are now 14 years old and heading to high school. So they felt the need to expand the Bailey School. Eventually, you know, most people don't see it that way, but not only did they expand Bailey Ellard, but they founded Morris Catholic as part of that boom.
Wow.
You know, like in my time,
Morris Catholic was founded
57.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I was in the 5th graduating class at Morris Catholic, and some of my classmates had older brothers and sisters who had gone to Bailey Ellard.
Because Bailey started in 48, 47, 48, 49, something like that. Yeah.
But, I mean, Bailey kind of took in the whole county at one point in a way that would not be true later on.
So there was a high school in Passaic.
There was no parish high school, but the first diocesan high school, Pope Pius XI.
In Passaic.
I mean Pius XII. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In Passaic, yes.
And then
Bailey Ellard.
What about Paterson Catholic? When did that?
Paterson Catholic comes later under Bishop Nava by closing 5 smaller Catholic high schools in the city.
Creating in one big.
Right. So the Cathedral, St. Joseph's, St. Mary's, and St. Bonaventure's all had parish high schools.
Okay, wow.
And there was also a small little private girls' school called Benedictine Academy, which was actually on the site where Paterson Catholic
ended up
developed.
Yeah.
So those 5 schools kind of faded out as Paterson Catholic was founded.
Yeah.
We still have in the diocese, you know, a small group of alumni that would remember that. For Monsignor Joe Good.
Oh, yes.
Is a graduate of St. Bonaventure's High School.
Oh, wow.
Father Wayne Varga, Monsignor Richard Scone, both went to St. Mary's Parish High School.
Yeah.
You know,
so there were, at one point, a great number. We had DePaul in this era founded, and I found out that the name was selected by the students. Vincent de Paul.
And probably connected to the Sisters of Charity that ran.
Okay, they probably had something to do with it.
Yeah.
And then there was Newman Prep at some point.
That comes later. Bishop Nava made a push for new schools in the 60s. So out of that came Paterson Catholic, Paul VI, and Newman Prep.
Okay. So the early ones were, as I mentioned, DePaul.
Well, the earliest would be Pope Pius XII of Passaic, then Bailey. Then in the mid-50s, well, first of all, in the earlier 50s, DePaul, and then in the late 50s, Morris Catholic and Pope John.
And
Pope John was originally
Our Lady of the Lake High School, and then it became
it's on
Pope
the
John.
Parish property of Our Lady of the Lake.
And then just maybe mention Don Bosco. Was that like a technical school?
Don Bosco was a technical high school in Paterson started by the Salesian Fathers.
Yeah. So,
And then, of course, you had several academies. You had
yeah, the
the Del
private,
Barton School comes in the 40s. Villa Walsh, the Academy of St. Elizabeth.
yeah.
The Academy of St. Elizabeth is really the oldest high school in the diocese.
From way back.
Yeah.
So, with a few minutes left, I wanted to move into a new wave of immigration, and this is the beginning of a large Spanish-speaking population in our diocese.
Yeah. One of the aspects that many people don't take into account, in the post-World War II era, the Puerto Ricans, who were American citizens since we were in charge of the island, they first begin to move into the urban areas of the country. And they are then, at the end of the 1950s, they are suddenly, without any warning, added to by Cuban immigration after the takeover of the island by Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
So they are the two. But in our diocese, the earliest Spanish migration,
I remember
this. This is weird Paterson diocese, I suppose, in its own way.
Yeah.
And
was it? We talked about this.
Is in Sussex County. The
the
mining communities in Franklin and Ogdensburg, the zinc mines up there.
Yeah.
There's several carloads of Mexicans that emigrate from northern Mexico, from the area around Durango and Monterey, and come northward to work in the mines in Sussex County in the 1920s.
Wow.
And while many of them go back, some of them do not. And those two communities still have a Latino population that is like on fifth generation, sixth generation already, because they've been here since the 20s.
Yeah.
Franklin, still as tiny as Franklin is. Franklin has a neighborhood called Little Mexico.
Okay. Well, next time we get together, we're going to continue speaking especially about the Puerto Rican community in Dover. We'll begin there and move on to the way that Bishop Mcnalty asked the diocese to look beyond its boundaries.